Hello, everyone, and welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV. I'm Paton. I've been off for a couple of weeks doing some hiking down in Tasmania, but I've been trying to catch the show, and the guys have done a fantastic job without me. But great to be back and to have Dan, the GOAT Begala here, and also Dan Batten to talk about what we're going to do with our KFC SuperCoach teams for round 8. And I've just got some breaking news that our friend Tim Mitchell, he hasn't been able to join us today because he's out and about. We need to cross to him live for some breaking get some kind of breaking news emoji or something happening on here, but he's just put in capital letters in our group chat. Greg Clark, Health and Safety Protocols. Greg Clark, H&S, Eagles statement.
You're kidding.
There, so that could just blow, throw out all the plans that we had for this week. Greg Clark, the most traded in player. I think when I looked up the numbers yesterday, he was been added to about 30,000 teams. He's obviously played one game last week and scored over 100 on debut against the Tigers, and very, very popular rookie option to come in this week. Although we didn't have to trade him in this week because his price wasn't going to rise anyway, but now that's going to delay it for another week. Dan Begala, quickly, was Greg Clark part of your trade plans for this week? How does this affect things at the Begala Brigade?
No, he was potentially going to be a solution for me, but I've got a pretty strong midfield, so I'm actually going to hold off, and I was going to pick him next week. So it might actually happen in round 10 that I actually pick Greg Clark now. But I was just going to take Mccomb, 102K, even if I make 80 grand, 90 grand now. Just thought the right strategy is to take the blokes that are on the bubble. Mccomb's on the bubble, 21 and 2. I mean, didn't use it that well, about 55% disposal efficiency. But I kind of like the notion that Beveridge likes these fellas that come from the school of hard knocks, go through the VFL, win a flag in the VAFA, who knows where, at St. Beans, where it might be.
EFL is Robbie
EFL, EDFL. But
from my area.
Well, that's the thing. I was going to bring Mccomb in, and I've got two other trades being Parker and I'm flipping a coin between Petrarca and Crips because I just don't have a good look at my round 12 bye. I'm very worried about the round 12 bye. So I am actually considering bypassing Crips, which is not ideal given his price and the fact he's really averaging about 135 points per week with that injury game wiped out. But I think Petrarca potentially. So there's a few things. Wait for teams tonight. Obviously, health and safety is becoming very prominent in the Western Australia. So there's a lot of players at Fremantle out now. There's a lot of players at West Coast that are affected. So there's 5 or 6 top-up players are playing for West Coast. So Greg Clark, not for me. Probably helps my side, lets me get some more cash into these rookies. And then obviously in round 10, I'll probably bring in Greg Clark and hopefully he averages 85 throughout the buys and helps us through there. I think that's the strategy I'm probably going to adopt for that.
Well, the one good thing is, I will have to hit reverse trades because I was going to bring in Greg this week along with a lot of other people. But Dan Batten, the good thing about it is, Dan's already mentioned Robbie Mccomb, and there are a few other rookies around on the bubble this week. Or if you want to go early on a couple of other guys, there were some good, impressive debuts last week too. So there's a few players there we can choose from to hopefully just sort of basically execute the same plan and then maybe get Clark next week or even the week after.
Yeah, exactly right. As we mentioned on the official KFC SuperCoach podcast, Jack Carroll scored the 95 points last week, and he could potentially be one you could jump on early if he is named. Obviously, wait to see teams tonight with Hewitt coming back into that Blues midfield. Also, Aiden Begg, who had a pretty impressive debut. I wasn't expecting too much, in all honesty. A beanpole ruckman, really. Second year sort of from being drafted, but he scored the 81 points. So you could go early on one of them, especially Aiden Beck, considering he's a forward ruck. Even if he doesn't play or he only plays a couple of games more from here, he could end up being a handy loophole. But Robbie Mccomb is really entered the mix now. I was probably going to pass on him just because of Greg Clark and the other options next week. Being 102K, Bevo spoke very highly about him post-game, about his work as a wingman, because usually he has played as an inside midfielder. He's 26 years old. He just finds the footy for fun. Even if he is playing on the wing, he had the 20-odd touches and 2 goals against the Bombers and has a history, a good KFC SuperCoach scoring history. He averaged the 100 points at VFL level last year. The only question mark is his job security, but it doesn't matter so much considering he's 102K. So he's probably the one I'd look to get in if you are looking at a Greg Clark. The other complication now, a little bit of breaking news in the last hour, reportedly Nick Dacos missed training with the flu today. So that throws up another curveball. It could potentially mean that you trade him out instead of an O'Driscoll or Juan Francis just because we're struggling for numbers, especially me in defence with my boy Alex Witherden, who I brought in last week. He's another victim to health and safety protocols. So, yeah, it's sure to be an interesting teams tonight as well.
What do you think, Dan Begala, about Nick Dacos? I was quite happy to hang on to him, even though his scores have been a little bit down the last few weeks, still pumping out 70s. He's still, he's making money, albeit, only very small amounts now, or he might have lost a couple of $100 or something last week, but I don't think he's going to really lose ground. He's basically going to stay where he is. And I thought he could be a handy placeholder there in maybe that last, or it's probably my second last still, unfortunately, spot in defence to get through to the buys. He's got the last buy in round 13 or 14, which is really handy because it means you can play him through the first 2 buy rounds, and then for the last round, trade him out for someone who's already had their buy, and it's sort of the perfect time. But given what's happened with his scoring and now the fact that he's under a bit of a cloud for this week, he might not play. The buys are still 4, 5, 6 weeks away. Is that too much to be hanging on?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Al. Like, he's probably the only asset in my portfolio that I can actually jump from to anyone half decent. So I'm planning to bring Parker, Petrarca, or Crips in. 2 of those 3 premiums will come into my side, and the only way I can get there is via Nick Dacos. And the way I look at it is, like we saw in last week's presser with Fly McRae, that he said, look, he's nursing a sore foot. He's just getting through games. He's a first-year player. Compare him to a second-year horse. Like, you've got to give him spells, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought to myself, like, if he's got the flu this week, or he's got gastro, whatever his ailment is, I suspect he might get rested this week, or he will be rested in the next few weeks. So I don't think I can get him through to the buys. I don't really need blokes averaging 70 points by the time we get to the buys. I sort of want to just fast-track my premiums. I'm about 3 or 4 off finishing my side, and with 2 or 3 more boosts still left, I can probably get there pre-buys. I've just got to make the call now on whether I bring a guy like Crips in, knowing he's going to hurt me in round 12, given that he's just so discounted to where his performance is. He's the 5th ranked mid. And that's probably the biggest concern on my side now. But for me, Dacos, it would be ideal to keep him to his buy, ideal. But we don't know what he could get injured. He might be rested. He might underperform. He's had 3 scores in the 70s over the last 3 weeks. Like that one game where he scored 125, he played in the pill, had 20-odd centre bounce attendances, and then subsequently Fly McRae's taken him to a back flank, a half-forward flank, a wing. And I just think a person doing their first job in that role isn't going to be conducive to scoring 100s. Like, you're playing that role for the first or second time in your life. You're historically an inside mid at Oakley Chargers. It's not easy to perform in those roles, even though he's a standout star and probably going to win the Rising Star. So for me, most likely he goes, and I think commonly the guys at the top of the ranks will be shorting him this week, I suspect, so they can get to guys like Tom Stewart in the back line or a Pendlebury or whomever it might be. And I'm just moving him on because I want Luke Parker at 514K. The guy will average 110 by the end of the year, and he's already had that big 150 that we missed last week. So time to jump on Parker and time to jump on an elite midfielder in the guts for me.
Yeah, I really like Luke Parker as well. We'll probably get him this week, but I don't want to talk too much about him because Dan had the option to get him last week and decided to get with it instead, so it didn't quite work out. So we don't need to rub that in. But just quickly, before we move off the rookies, Dan, interesting comment here from Justin Steele talking about Nathan O'Driscoll. I think he actually has the same buy as Nick Dacos, so you could sort of employ the same tactic with him. Would you rather keep him, especially I suppose if Dacos doesn't play this week, but if you trade him in, obviously, if you got him on the bubble or even after his first price rise, you've made $150,000+ out of him, which is a great return for a rookie, even though we thought he'd probably keep putting up big scores for a bit longer. But his draw doesn't look too bad. And then there's some people who will be in a situation like me who trade him in after 2 price rises, and he's only gone up about 60K since then. So I don't really want to catch him in yet. But how do you think Nathan O'Driscoll's travelling? Hopefully with a few COVID outs at Freo, he'll keep his spot. If he hope he's isolated somewhere and doing all the right things, wearing a mask. We can't afford him to catch COVID as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might be getting a few DMs from super coaches just saying, lay low, stay home, all the rest of it. But yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think personally, a few days ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said definitely trade a Driscoll over Dacos. Dacos is a reliable 70. I don't think he scored under, or he scored that one 50-point effort, but beyond that, he's just been pumping out consistent 70s with a couple of 90s and a 120 this year. So I think he's just going to continue being a consistent scorer, but obviously there's the question mark over whether he'll get rested or whether he'll miss this week. I think you can make the call judging on this round. I don't think O'Driscoll is the guy who's going to be a reliable on-field scorer every week. We've seen the last 2 weeks, 42 and a 57. And even though and that's even with kicking goals as well, he does have a high ceiling, but I think that Dacos is probably more steady, but it also depends what you can get with the Dacos. If that gets you to Max Gawn or, a Clayton Oliver over a lesser premium, then probably trading Dacos is the right call.
Now we've got another addition to SuperCoach TV. The Phantom has been able to join us, which is great news. Did the news get to the lair, Phantom, that Greg Clark has come down with health and safety? Well, he's going to miss this week with health and safety protocols. So that's a massive issue for lots of KFC Supercoaches who were planning to trade him in. Some already traded him in last week and got that 104 against the Tigers, which was pretty good. But does that blow everything up for your plans this week?
Sorry I'm late, guys. Sorry I'm late, KFC Supercoach. I did hear about, just got off the phone to Adam Simpson, actually. Wants me to see if I was available to play this week. But, I will be at Manuka Oval. The Tom Green fan club will be back at Manuka Oval, so I said I couldn't make it this week. But Greg Clark blows up my whole trade plans. I'm sure he discussed already. But I guess given he's not on the bubble this week and there's a few other options around, can probably still go through with what I'm going to do, which might be a Max Gawn or could be a Touk Miller. I want to ask the people's champion, the GOAT, Dan Begala. Nice to see him again. We've carried the team here for the last couple of weeks on KFC SuperCoach Live TV. It's good to have you back, Al, but some good fun with the people's champ. We'll talk about Max Gawn, I'm sure, a little bit later.
Well, one thing, I guess, that's sort of becoming an issue. We've touched on the buys, and that's something that we need to start thinking about as well. But as Dan Begala said, normally it's a bit of an unusual season in that normally what happens is we get to those rounds sort of 12, 13, 14, and that's when we finish our – yes, very good, Anthony, agree with that. That's when we sort of finish our teams. We've usually got a few rookies left, and that's when you can sort of start trading them out and bring in, your final upgrades. But as Dan mentioned, because of the boost and the extra trades this year, a lot of people are going to have a team pretty much finished before we even get to the buys. So, Phantom, is that sort of the situation you're in? And, how does that change how we, plan ahead looking at our teams at the moment?
Yeah, we discussed this in depth on the Phantom's Lair podcast this week and talked about if you're going in with 22 premiums to the buyers, what does that mean? Unless you're really balanced and you're set up really nicely across those 3 weeks, what does that mean? Are you sideways trading premiums across the bye weeks just to field your right team? Because we know in the past we plan those upgrades, to make sure that we're balanced over the buy rounds. We use those buy rounds to trade out your rookie or trade out the mid price or bring in the premium off the buy. But if you've got 22 premiums, how many trades can you use on sideways in them to get 16 or 17 or 18 players? So it's an interesting one and a different game this year. I think probably come down to me and a lot of teams out there, the Nick Martins, the Stephen Cornelios, the Will Brodies. They're the guys you might be trading or upgrading slightly around the buy time when their buy's there and when the other premium's coming off the buy, and you might be able to balance your premiums each week by doing that. So that's where I'm looking at the moment, going hard the next couple of weeks, but still with one eye, keep balance and keep competitive every week of the buy rounds.
And the other question along those lines, Dan Begala, I'll just quickly throw at you, is you mentioned someone like a Tom Stewart. A lot of us, and I'm in this situation where I've just been grabbing the best players that I can each week that I think are the best value. So, I got Clayton Oliver last week because his price was, about as low as it's ever going to get. And this week, I think Patrick Crips is the absolute standout. 526,000 for a guy who's basically averaging 140, as you said, if you take out that one game when he hurt his hamstring. So that's right up there with Lachie Neale as the top scorers in the game. So for 526K, I think his break-even's 29 this week. So now's the time to get him. But it just means I'm kind of keep loading up the midfield. Do I need to be thinking about, what's happening in my forward line and my defence? Because I've still got 2 rookies on field in defence, including Dacos. Should I be addressing that issue? Or because there's not really a defender, certainly in that sort of price that could score anything like Crips. I mean, I'm sort of hoping that it'll all kind of sort itself out eventually with some DPPs and things. But do we need to be mindful of, where we're at with each different line?
Now, the way I look at it is that you probably just can't stare a gift horse in the mouth, and that's what Patrick Crips is. Like, for those that don't have him, I think he's just the definition of arbitrage. 521 grand, averaging on par with Lachie Neale if you discount that hamstring-affected awareness game in the Gold Coast. But yeah, I think that you just have to pick the players where they are. If they pop up in that particular line for that particular week, well, guess what? You've got to sometimes join the herd and jump on those players. And for me this week, I'm balancing whether I take Crips again, given I shorted him after that hamstring, or I take Track, who actually helps me look a lot better in round 12, which is an additional player and an additional premium scorer. So that's what I'm grappling with this week. But in terms of that, I think you've got to look at compare the roles. So if you have a half decent midfield 8 rookie playing in the guts, and you think he can score 80. I don't think there are any out there because Juan Francis is averaging 70, Rochelle's averaging 65, probably 50 really at the moment. And then I look to the back line, just think at the end of the day, you should be just grateful for the fact that you actually only have 1 or 2 rookies left over or 3 rookies left over, and you just keep attacking the premiums. You just know that their scoring is going to outweigh any poor performances on the rookie front. And even the best rookies being Juan Francis, Dacos, they're all capable of very underwhelming scores. On the weekend, Juan Francis got nominated for the Rising Star and probably had his worst game of the year. I was watching it as a Carlton fan and thought he's looking for fights, it seems, and that's all he was after. And he kicked the ball sideways half the time he had it. So for me, I just feel like you've just got to just keep attacking the premiums. Like, just don't even worry about the rookies. That's my modus operandi, is to get the premiums in as quickly as I possibly can. But the analysts out there will assume, well, what's the trade-off? If I give up Dacos and I get Crips here, well, you have to try and work out which way it works for you. And if that means to turn a Dacos into a Crisp and keep a rookie in the mids, you do that. And if it means you take Crips and you take a risk in playing those rookies in the defence, well, then you try that as well. So it's just looking at the benefit of both ways. But for me, like, how often does a 521 grand midfielder who's probably in Brownlow contention right now, probably 5 best on grounds and really averaging 140? I mean, they don't grow on trees, and it's a shame that I shorted him because I thought he'd be out for 2 weeks and he was only out for 1, and he came back and went 140 both weeks. So I have to bring him back. But again, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'm going to go well now, but I am very worried about round 12. But I have 5 rounds to rectify my team by then. I think there'll be an injury, and I know that Nick Martin will leave my team that week because that's the week they're on the buys, and I'll upgrade him to the best available mid at that stage, probably Andy Brayshaw or someone like that when they're at 530 grand, hopefully. That is my plan for now.
So does that mean do you save a spot in your midfield for an upgrade like that?
I do have a spot saved in my midfield because I know that I'll play. I think my M8 will be to the end of the year. Will probably be Nick Martin, or to these bars, probably Nick Martin and Parker just floating between the 2 lines, depending on what happens. So Nick Martin will play there. And then the obvious strategy is to then improve D5 and D6, which are going to be Nathan O'Driscoll, Sam DeConing, and Pat McCartan fighting for that role. So they're going to fight. Yeah. And I like putting competitive pressure amongst my defenders because it means that you get the best out of them. So that's what's happening in the back line with the assistance of Gold Coast Suns' favourite son, Bodie Uland. He's going to help out with that, with the loopholing. But that's my strategy. My strategy is to accept that I will have 2 very risky rookies in defence, being guys that can score 30 or guys that will score 70. But I just know that the portfolio is so heavily weighted towards premiums that they'll just offset that. Like, a lot of people still don't have Gorn. A lot of people still don't have a number of my premiums like Jack Steele and a few others that I've got. And I just know that guys like Took Miller, like, they're just going to keep offsetting these poor rookie scores with 160s, 150 points after quarter time type performances. So get the primos in as quickly as you can. And I've turned a blind eye to what happens in my defence. I don't particularly care because I just know I've got so much talent around the rest of the field. And fans and everyone else is probably in the same boat as me on that front.
Yeah, no, I think I'm certainly there. Dan Batten, if you were looking at a defender, Shawnee Willis is asking Sicily,
Not
a bit
Alex
of value. No, don't get Alex with it. Or would you pay up for Tom Stewart? He's over 600K. I think his break even's only 50 or something after that score last week. 187 was it? Did he have? As I said, I was off hiking. I was just checking the numbers after I came back. Did he really have 40 disposals against Fremantle?
He really did, and every single one hurt, just like a dagger after getting with it in the night before. But
can I just butt in?
Yeah.
Can I just butt in? You got with it. I think you told me and Dan Begala on last week's show who were you trading in. You were going Luke Parker, Patrick Crips, or Clayton Oliver. You were locked in. What happened?
Yeah, this was also mentioned on the Phantoms lair. So I went was going with the VC on Crips and was going with Parker. Then Hewitt was out on the Friday. I thought, oh no, I might be a little bit short in defence. You know what? I'll go for Alex Witherden, who should absolutely rack it up against the Tigers. He did, but obviously all of his touches were after quarter time when the game was over. So that hurt. And also Clayton Oliver got copped the tag in the second half. So wasn't my week. Had plenty of luck, but not as much luck as the Phantom this year. Gee whiz, he is getting off scot-free for sure, dodging every single bullet. But yeah, just in terms of the original question, I don't mind jumping on Stewart now because he will be a nice little pod. He's in 20% of teams, but not many teams are going to be going near him, and he's going to have that 180-point score in his price in his cycle for the next 2 weeks. So playing against the Giants as well. They're obviously the Phantom will be watching on, hoping that he isn't taking the kick-ins, but yeah, I don't mind him as an option. Sicily is this year consistent 110 every week, which I guess Stewart is as well to an extent. Playing against the Bombers, who have had some absolutely horrendous ball use into their forward 50, so he could have an absolute field day. But I think if you have got the cash and you don't have upgrades planned that'll need that little bit of extra money, I'd go for Stewart for that I guess more reliable scoring and also the higher ceiling there at just a 50k increase.
I think
mentioned those
Dana wants to talk about rucks.
I know, Dan, those things. So bringing it up, we have to mention
there's an issue in the
on
lab.
KFC SuperCoach Live TV.
No!
But
he's lagged out.
Oh dear, there's some connection issues.
His luck's finally run out this year.
Yeah, we might have to come back on that.
Back?
Oh, he's back.
He's back. There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Sorry, Dan. I know we have to bring those things up on KFC SuperCoach Live TV, but it also goes back to the conversation we had last week about having Sam Hayes on field. We had discussion, maybe Sam Hayes and a primo midfielder was potentially a better combination than Max Gawn, a rookie midfielder.
It's aged very
gone a bit
poorly,
almost full circle. Yes, and then you raised to me earlier in the week about Greg Clark. Could he be the one that tips the favour back in the Gawn and rookie mids scales? But it's a hard one now. I want to ask Dan Begala what he thinks. So Sam Hayes, I'm definitely going to have the emergency on him on Friday night and see what he scores first against the Bulldogs. Do you think it's worth spending the 2 or 3 trades and all the cash to get Max Gawn, push Hayes back to the bench, and play a midfielder on field, a rookie one on field? Or am I better up going for a Tuke Miller or something like that and just going with Hayes and then making Nick Martin into Gawn the buys? When you go the 4 weeks without Gawn?
It's a tough predicament you're in there, I think, because I was actually sitting on the couch last Saturday with a friend and we're watching the games with little Henry and his little bassinet, which is quite cute. But effectively, he was sitting there watching Bruce score, and if Bruce scored well, which he did in the first quarter, he took a few clunks, intercept marks against Adelaide. He was like, I'm going with Hayes. I'm not taking Gawn. And he did that. And then that night, I guess the conditions were so unfavourable to a spider-type ruckman, like a guy that's not that mobile around the ground. It was just dewy. The ground was cut up to shreds, and the score was 39-40, whatever it was. But I think Hayes will bounce back and he'll probably get back to that, averaging that 80 points per week. I think he genuinely will, because he is, in his first 2 games, his hit-outs to advantage ratio were fantastic. And he unfortunately came up against a pretty strong duo in Paddy Ryder, a fantastic tap ruckman who probably pinches a lot of the hit-outs, which he did. And then Campbell's quite a thwarter. Like, he thwarts ruckman. Like, I think people underestimate how strong and just focused on his task is that bloke. So for me, I think you probably at least have a look on Friday night against the Dogs. Hopefully, for your sake, Tim English doesn't come in, because you'll probably sit on his head and kill him around the ground. But
yeah.
I do think the Gawn issue is, if you are going to play versus Gawn, there's potentially going to give up 70 points a week in that respective position. Like I told my friend on Saturday, I said, you'll give up 100 points Max Gawn and I'll VC him, and you'll give up 100 points. And what did he do? He actually added 120 points plus the VC. So that's a coach killer, that, for them. But look, the season's so long and you've got to have Gawny, I think. And what we're seeing is a bloke that's just at the top of his game. I think they had him on the couch on Monday comparing him as the best ruckman of the modern generation, up there with Dean Cox, statistically probably better with 5 All Australians versus Cox's 6. But yeah, I'm pretty, I was pretty interesting move for me to short him in round 3. It was probably the right move, because I picked up about 300, 400 grand. You can't get that any other way other than waiting for your rookies to appreciate. So it worked.
Yep.
Didn't give up too many points because Tim English mitigated him throughout that period of time, and English got injured at training. So I think it worked for me, but I did burn a few trades to make it happen. But having him back, I think the anxiety levels come down when you have Max on your side, because the last thing you want to do is face 53% of coaches that have him with the VC slapped on him most weeks, although this is probably not going to be the week for that with the Sunday Mother's Day game, Saints versus Sinners. I do think you probably got to get him in. I'm going to burn my fourth. I think it's my fourth boost this week. Not burn it, utilize it, leverage it, whatever you want to call it. But I'm going to put it to action this week. I think I'm going to go after 2 primos, and like, it's just the cadence of my team is going so well. And I mean, there's people worrying in the comments about health and safety hitting through winter. Like, I mean, there's better chance. Like, I mean, I can't forecast the future. I'm focused on the now. I'm focused on being present. I'm going hell for leather, and that's what everyone should be doing, particularly in the Phantoms position, being in the top 1,000. I think you should go and try and acquire Gawn, and 3 trades to acquire a guy worth 650 grand. Like, it's probably what you need anyway. Like, it's a privilege that you get 3 trades with the boost. So I think you've got to potentially bite the bullet if Hayes goes sub 60, 70 on Friday and bring him in. That's what I would do, but I'm not gonna gobble up your words. I'd like to hear what you think, because I do think that Gawn is going to make or break your season if you wait too long for him. He seems like he's on a tear at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to go 90 from Hayes on Friday night and just go with a Tuke Miller in the midfield. Anything less, or if he struggled again, Sam Hayes, I don't think he will. We saw how many ruck contests there was up in Cairns last week. I think only 12 goals kicked in total, so wasn't many in the centre. 12 centre bounces, wasn't many. But Greg Clark was going to be the one to play on field in the midfield, then have Gawn. I was happy to burn Dacos, Rochelle, and Jack Hayes. It was going to be fine. But now I need to find out who can I trust on field in the midfield, more so than a full-time ruckman who has scored well in his first 2 games that wasn't in Cairns. So now I'm going to next couple of days to weigh it up. I think Greg Clark now maybe tips it back in the scale of taking a Hayes 80 or 85 and seeing what I've got there in the midfield. But I'm not sure yet. I'm happy burning 3 trades for him. It's just whether I can find that suitable on-field replacement in the middle.
He was, to that point with Hayes, he was on 33 points at quarter time. So he actually was doing really well, and it looked like he was on par for a ton. And then the flat line happened and the weather probably started to get the better of him. And also the fact that there weren't many goals kicked, so there's not many centre bounce attendances for the poor fella. So he'll bounce back, and I think you should go 80 plus against Steph Martin if that's the case. I think you'd be all right there.
Yeah, I think Sam Hayes had something like a dozen hit-outs to advantage in each of his first 2 games, and then 0 last week. So he actually probably did all right to score 50-something without any hit-outs to advantage at all. So, yeah, just absolutely horrible conditions there. But I think I'm in a little bit of a similar situation, not with Gawn, but in terms of my trades, I was very happy to bring Greg Clark in, knowing that I'd have to play him on the field. Now, probably Mccomb, but I'm not as confident about putting him in at M8 as I was about Greg Clark, that's for sure. But yeah, so I've still got someone like a Josh Ward on the bench. That's not ideal, but hopefully it's only maybe a week, and then we get Greg Clark in that position. Interesting question. Dan, maybe I'll throw this at you, Dan Batten, just to start with. But Corey's asking about Dylan Moore, which is someone I hadn't really thought about, I have to say. He's 495K. He's averaging over 100, coming off 147 last week. But it sort of, I think, plays into a bigger question of, we talk about going for a Tuke Miller or a Tom Stewart. You can't always afford the top guys in every position. And sometimes you sort of have to make a call to go for someone who's a little bit cheaper, but you think offers some really good value. And then that maybe, allows you to have the cash to spend up in other positions. I know Tim Mitchell's a big fan of Darcy Cameron at the Pies. He's only in the sort of 300K range, I think. He's a ruck forward, so you could get him in the forward line. I think he's basically going to be playing in the ruck while Brody Grundy's out. But what are your thoughts on, grabbing some of these sort of cut price premiums and cut price options in the place of a premium? And what about Dylan Moore as a bit of a bolter from the Hawks?
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw Dylan Moore's average and his possession tallies as well. He's not just kicking goals. He's kicking, 2 or 3 every week, but he's winning a lot of the ball as well. 33 touches against the Ds and a goal there, and also 11 marks. His work rate's been phenomenal. He's one of the most underrated players in the comp, I reckon, and certainly putting his hand up for potential All-Australian squad honours at the end of the year. But Yeah, it's a tricky one whether we trade him into our SuperCoach teams. I don't think there's enough evidence there for us to jump on, considering there's an option like Luke Parker, who we know is just so reliable. You'd say at a minimum he's averaging 100 points, especially with that midfield minutes. He could be potential 110 average, and he's only about he's actually 20k more, and he's coming off a score of 150. So I think you probably just got to go with Parker. I am considering Darcy Cameron myself, just because he does have that role for the next 10 weeks or so while Brodie recovers from that PCL injury. And also for those without a Max Gawn, if you are feeling a bit of Max FOMO, which I am as well, you could certainly look to get a Cameron this week, and then next week, when there are some rookies on the bubble, get Max Gawn before he plays the Eagles, because that's going to be the game where he comes out and scores 210. I think I'm going to watch
at halftime
this week. Potentially quarter time. Who knows? You could break some ridiculous records racking against. Well, you look at their ruck stocks. Luke Stranatica's out with COVID. Bailey Williams is injured. Hugh Dixon's going to be rucking as ruck one, so he actually might be a decent on-field option this week, especially for those with Jack Hayes as R2, or Jack Hayes as the R3 to potentially choose between Sam Hayes and Dixon. But yeah, I probably prefer going a Parker, someone who's a bit more reliable. But yeah, there are quite a lot of options bobbing up in the forward line. But yeah, I think considering we have pods sort of all over the ground, it makes sense to pick some reliable ones in the forward lines, especially ones that are getting consistent set of bounces.
Yeah, I think the issue there with Moore is that he's actually not that cheap. Like, if you're going to take a bit of a risk, you probably would do it on someone like Cameron, who's 330 grand. But if you're going to be spending up for more, you may as well, if you can, just find an extra 20 and get someone like a Luke Parker. Couple of interesting sort of technical questions here. We better start wrapping things up soon. But I don't know, Phantom, if you've got time to read through all of this. But Neville asking about, is he starting to really look at the buys? If you've got SuperCoach Plus, there's a buy planner there that you can see how many players you've got available or unavailable across each week of the buys, which is definitely worth taking a look at around. I must admit, I haven't paid too much attention to it before now, but I did click on it yesterday, and my team's not looking too bad, although I did bring in the Bond a couple of weeks ago, so I don't know if I want another Bulldogs midfielder in Robbie Mccomb, but he probably is going to be the best option this week. But Neville here asking, is it worth, with the rookie options around, if they're not going to be scoring that much anyway, can we rely on them getting us through the buys, or are you better off to, like Dan Begala was talking about the advantage of having a loophole in defence. I've got a similar situation with still having to play one or two rookies on the field, but I've got Gibcus and De Koning and Paddy McCartan, like they're all playing most weeks, so it's just a bit of a lottery picking which one to actually start on the field. Maybe I would have been better off going with a Bodie Hewland or someone which will allow me to try and get the best score from those guys each week. But how can you help Neville out here?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Dan Begala was saying before about how you can improve your team and look for the now. So, Neville, it depends what you're doing that trade for. If you need to go down to the loop, or look at that first. If you can improve your team with a premium player, I do whatever you can, whatever works with the money. Because when we get to round 12, if you've traded in a player that scores 30 or 40, just have a definite extra name for round 12, and you've overlooked a premium that might have the buy, but your premium's going to play for the next 4 weeks, then that 30 or 40 points is not worth sacrificing your upgrade plan or whatever you're trying to do now. So I wouldn't be going to try to trade a rookie in now just because they're playing in round 12. I think if it suits and the money allows you to follow through with your other plan, I think that's fine. But I wouldn't just be focusing on that 18th player. I don't like trading for a donut at the moment either. You said you've got a pretty good bench by the looks of it. It looks pretty stacked, but what you're telling us. And again, I'm a bit confused, as you can probably tell. I don't like trading for the donut, but then, if you can't loophole every week, then you might be costing yourself a few points there that might make up for a potential donut that you have at one point anyway. So I look at what you can do upgrade-wise and improve your team, and then think of how you're going to get there second. Interesting what Dan Begala thinks about that. Would you trade for a donut? Would you trade for a round 12 rookie?
I wouldn't trade for a donut now. I mean, I started with one because I couldn't find a way to get Gibkiss into my side. And I mean, for those that have been patient with Josh Gibkiss, the dividends are coming now. Like, you're going to get some substantial price appreciation. You got that. I think he scored 100 a couple of weeks ago, which really helps. But I don't think now, in being on the verge of round 8, which is the 1/3, we've wrapped 33% of the season. So I don't think you're bringing in donuts now. I don't think you're bringing in floating donuts. I think you're just acquiring the likes of Mccomb, the little fella on the forward line from North Melbourne, Curtis. Have a look at him. And then you've got to pick up Greg Clark in round 10, because obviously he's going to miss with health and safety, which we've heard today, which is quite a shock and quite a surprise. But I'm actually quite, like, another elephant in the room is the Western Australian sides. Like, do you have to avoid players like Andrew Brayshaw and anyone relevant from a Supercoach perspective, with the notion that they're segregating players at training and making them drive their own vehicles? And that's not very environmentally friendly, we must admit, on this channel here. So I'm not really sure about that. Unless we're driving Teslas, they might have Teslas or Polestas, whatever they're called. But I do think that there's definitely a problem in WA at the moment, and that is going to affect probably Andrew Brayshaw at some stage, unless he's had it over summer. Came to Melbourne, I'm not sure what he did, but he's a studious type. I could see him just going home from training and studying and getting his degree and being the face of Curtin University and getting it all done. So he might be fine for the season, but yeah, as with the fans, I'm on the same boat as you. Don't trade in floating donuts, because there's going to be plenty of floating donuts as H&S takes effect throughout winter. And obviously what happens in the WA states, with the two teams over there really struggling to contain it within their own respective regimes. So, yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's too early in the season. Like, if it was round 19, 20 going to the finals and it made your side super flexible and you could move Nick Martin to cover every single line or whatever it might be, yes. But we are a long way from the finish line now. We haven't really even hit the start of the marathon yet, so it's probably too early for me to start doing that. But I started with Bodie Ulan just out of fact. I wanted to maximise my side, and the floating donut has worked for me in seasons gone by. I can maximise points, but nowadays I just don't think it's worthwhile acquiring someone unless there is potential. You suspect it's an Elijah Hollands who's kicking the door in at VFL level, who's going to play shortly. Maybe you could take them. But again, like, I've got friends that took Darcy Wilmot from Brisbane in defence, thinking he's going to play round 1 or 2 or 3. He's nowhere. Like, where is he? Like, I don't know what's going on with him, but he did a great practice game and then he got suspended, and he hasn't even I don't even think he's been named in the emergencies yet. So that's the sort of problem with a floating donut, or even someone that you think might or might not play. There is risk that they get injured in the lower levels, and it can hamstring you thereafter.
Yep, that's all very good advice. And another one, maybe Dan Batten, quickly for you on sort of some more strategy. But if you had a choice between a couple of primos, would you take someone with DPP? Would that tip the odds in their favour? Michael Large here thinking about Scott Pendlebury potentially in defence, but has maybe not the ceiling of someone like a Tom Green. We won't ask what fandom what he thinks about that, but he does have the advantage that you can maybe swing him across the midfield and defence to sort of cover some gaps, which seems like we're probably going to get at some point.
Yeah, I think that Pendlebury could be a top 6 defender anyway, and it's probably more likely to be top 6 in his position than Tom Green. I know I'm going to cop a barrage from Phantom, and the hail is pouring down there on his roof. I know he's on mute because otherwise he'd be yelling into the microphone. But no, I think that that Pendlebury, what he's been showing, he's just ultra consistent, and they're going to keep relying on him. Even it showed in Anzac Day when they just threw him into the middle and he got those centre bounces, and they trust him off half back as well. So I think he can be that 105 guy in defence. And obviously it helps if you've got, say, like a Mitch Cox or a Bodie Uland in your midfield to swing with him. So, and particularly during the buys as well, I wouldn't necessarily be favouring a player just because of their DPP, but I think I like Pendlebury as an option personally. I think Tom Green is maybe a season away from really hitting that 115 to 120 that we know he can certainly get to. But yeah, I think out of those two, it's probably Pendles for me.
Yep. There was another question: Crips or Tom Green, Phantom? Where do you sit on that one?
Just quickly, I do agree with Dan Batten. Pendlebury, reliable, looks, again, for a 105-point average. We'll definitely take that in defence in the top 6 or 8. As much as I love Tom Green, you have to take Patrick Cripps at that price this week. So don't even think twice about doing, as you guys discussed earlier, a player averaging that and in such form for less than 530k, a top 6 midfielder for 530k, absolute steal. So Crips over Green this week for sure. Crips over pretty much anyone in the midfield.
Yeah, I think so. All right, we've been going 40 minutes. We better talk about some captains. One issue for me, maybe I do need to bring in Greg Clark because I might not have a donut anywhere this week, although that's very sort of optimistic at this stage.
Nice.
I probably thought that about this time last week and ended up with like 6 injured players with Greg Hewitt and the likes pulling out. George Hewitt, I should say. But if Brady Hoff comes in for the Eagles, which has been mooted that he probably will because they might not have anyone else, I might not have any zeros, and that's if Paddy McCartan is back. So if I have to go a straight captain, I think Lachie Neale against West Coast has to be the standout option. He's got a good record against the Eagles, but I mean, regardless of that, he's coming off a 180 something, and the Eagles have sort of no one to play on him. He might be playing on Patrick Nash or somebody. So
Aaron Black from the Waffle.
yeah, exactly. They'll probably have a few of those guys playing. So yeah, it could get pretty ugly out there. If anyone's got the big O in the ruck. Could be the time for him to shine. I don't think he's had as good a year as we were thinking he might, but maybe in someone's draft team, it could be the week. But anyone else I could be looking at for captaincy, or what would your strategy be with Dan Begala? What do you think about Jack Macrae? Are we off him in terms of VC options at the moment?
Yeah, like as I say, as soon as SuperCoach opens on Monday, or it opens Sunday, but I check it Monday and I always start looking at the captaincy. And I don't absolutely love Macrae's record at Port. I know he had that big game where he did his hammy and he was on about 90 in the second quarter a few years ago in the wet. But other than that, he doesn't really light the place on fire. So I'm just thinking Bont loves them. So maybe I might avoid Macrae. But given what you just said about loopholes, Bodie Uwan is the only one I've really got. And the only player that's capable of a big score is really Macrae playing Friday night. And there's many different things to think because Driscoll's playing Friday night. I want to see how he performs. Do I play him at D7 and then bring him on? Does George Hewitt become a late out? There's lots of things to consider. So I'm not too phased. I think Lachie Neale's going, I'm going to say 150, I think. I think he will because unless they bring Mark Hutchings. Did they delist him? I don't even know if he still exists. But he could come in and try and do a job, but I don't think he's still a West Coast Eagles player anymore. But I think Neale and the form he was in, he had 27 contested footy. He just really wanted the ball on Sunday afternoon and really personified why Brisbane are really a top three side. But yeah, I'll probably go, if I don't really have any, if teams drop tonight and Uwan's the only option I have to loop, I suspect there might be some health and safety. Maybe a McDonald gets dropped. I would like that because it would help my side, not for him personally, but just so it helps me with the 7:25 Saturday game. But I do think it'll be Macrae probably into Neale. With the fact is, I also have my concerns around Gawn. He struggled in I know he's averages about 113, 114 against the Saints. I do think Paddy Ryder and Marshall pose pretty strong difficulty when you're trying to score against them. And their midfield's mopping up a lot of the footy. So a lot of his hit-outs will get sharked. So I'm probably just going to go Macrae into Neale. But every time I do go Neale straight C, he gets tagged. And it's like me stressing on my phone to the last minute while he kicks late goals to get to 105. So he's been my two lowest captaincies this year at 105 and 108. And both times heavily tagged. So West Coast don't have anyone capable. That's good. No Shuey, no Yo, no anyone. So I do think he'll get off the leash and he'll have 40 and kick 2. That's what I'm hoping.
It might be, you probably know quarter time. I mean, last week, if it's anything similar, I think Jaden Short had about 80 points at quarter time and finished with 150. But, the bulk of the scoring was in that early part of the game because after that, everything sort of devalued once the result is already in the bag. So have to hope that he gets off to a good start. But Dan, have you looked at captains? I guess that, ideally what would be great is if you could VC Lachie Neale just to give yourself a little bit of a insurance in case something does go wrong. And there's some good options after him. You could captain, Gawn or an Oliver or Patrick Crips, but you need to have a donut playing on the Sunday and there's only the 2 games.
Speaking of which, Ella, I do in Jack Hayes. I've held on to him just for that ruck forward swing. So, but it'll depend how Hayes goes on the weekend because I'm probably going to put him emergency on the Friday night. And then if he scores poorly, I'll sub Hugh Dixon into my rucks and play him on field. So it might be a bit of a watch and see in that case. But yeah, it's definitely just got to revolve Lachie Neale in some way. If you've got Zorko, actually, no, sorry, not Zorko, because that's in the same game.
Zorko's a good shout, though. He's in my draft team. So I'm looking forward to hopefully him having a big game.
Yeah, for sure. And then you look at any Freo options against North Melbourne, maybe an Andrew Brayshaw Will Brodie. That would be the epitome of the fandom to put the VC on Will Brodie. But no, I think I'm not 100% sure where I'm going for the VC, but it may end up being a Jack Macrae potentially. But yeah, it's definitely gonna be C or potentially VC on Lachie Neale.
Well, it might depend on George Hewitt as well, obviously playing in the final game on Sunday. If he doesn't play, then everyone's almost got a donut on the Sunday as well. Could work in the Lachie Neale VC favour. Quickly, Jack Macrae, 5 weeks ago, you wouldn't have said Jack Macrae on a Friday night at Adelaide Oval, where he scored massive in the past, would be a bit of a unique VC. So I think he's still a good option. I think he can bounce back. But if I do have another option, a loophole option that pops up, I'll probably look at Callum Mills against the Gold Coast into Neale. Yeah,
just looking at the order of the games. I mean, if Nick Dacos doesn't play, that would give me probably a loophole, unless I sort of change all my trade plans. But they play, that's the first game on Saturday against the Tigers. So it would have to be a VC in one of the first 2 games. But that does give you the Bulldogs, all the Bulldogs mids. Dunkley's another option there. Bont was a bit better last week, but
I can give you some loopholes if you want, Al. I've got a few if you want to trade.
Witherden.
Entertain trading.
Witherden could be your captain this week, Dan. That might.
Yeah, you could
make it a little bit better about it.
Yeah, that
we
would
better wrap things
up.
The final segment that we usually go with is a zinger of the week. There's been some potting of the Phantom. I don't know if we want to go with that. But
go with it. Go with it.
Oh, we're gonna go with it. All right, hang on. Let me find out where to go. Sorry, hang on. Let me just scroll down. There he is.
Bang.
Yes. Now, Brenton, thank you. I'll take your word for it. We know it was about the brand. The trading Tom Green in was just to enjoy Tom Green. I said at the time that I wasn't jumping off Darcy Parish. I still think he was going to score well. I know I did say that Green might get him in the long run. I think he still could. Also made 90K on the trade, which helped with the Bowie to Sam Doherty, I think, a week later as well. So, Brenton, you're right, but I'm very happy with the move. Got my man in, got 90K, and my team's looking all right. So, thanks for the zinger of the week.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully, Greg Clark out doesn't ruin people's plans too much. There are some other good rookies around. Saw another question there about Cooper Hamilton, who looked pretty good in his first game. Keen to have another look at him. From the Giants. He's got a DPP, which is handy. But we get another week to look at how he's going. And Jack Carroll, obviously, from the Blues was really impressive in his first game as well. But probably Robbie Mccomb from the Bulldogs might be the man who comes into a whole lot of teams this week with no Greg Clark available. But Dan Begala, thank you. The Phantoms bailed on us. The hail over there in the lead must have got pretty
He's in tears after that big zinger from Brenton.
Yep. And Dan Batten, thank you. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Heaps of SuperCoach content on the website. Go and check it all out. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys.